So now we get to begin the questions, and we will, you, Mr. Peterson, you get to answer the first one, and then the others will follow, and I will tell you what order. Here's the question. Please explain how you feel excuse me, about high-speed rail. What is the level of activity you are willing to spend on this issue? What will you do to demonstrate to the community what the impacts of high-speed rail will be to Menlo Park?
This proves there is a God. I didn't mention that I was a co-founder of the Community Coalition on High-Speed Rail. Everybody, or most people, think that I'm just dead set against it. That is not technically true. I was for it in 2003. And I thought, if I'm going to be a supporter of this project, I've got to find out what it is, because I really didn't know. I didn't know what really happened in the 80s. I didn't know what happened in the current plans. The current plans are just not right. There's not a document that the High-Speed Rail Authority put out that you can really credibly rely on. There may be some advantages or benefits to high-speed rail, not much for our community. And the greater good argument that we're going to tear up the entire Caltrain right-of-way to make great communities elsewhere kind of rubs me the wrong way. It's not financially sound or economically viable. The Legislative Analyst's Office has said it's perhaps illegal, what they're planning to do. The EIR, something that people don't really kind of key in on, is the fact that the EIR is really not done properly. There are sections missing and whole analyses that are wrong. And as far as the environmental aspects of transportation, it's going to take 71 years to pay back the greenhouse gases it takes to build the darn thing. I don't think that's an environmental transportation system. I don't think the state can afford it. I don't think the region can afford it. And I think we can do better. So at this point, I'm opposed to that, and I will keep working with Community Coalition High-Speed Rail. I have thankfully brought Heyward along on this journey, literally to Sacramento. We met with a lot of legislatures throughout the past year, and also have provided information for Rich Klein on the council subcommittee on high-speed rail. It's kind of my life right now, and that's all I can say. Oh, one thing I should add, people are worried I'm right against the tracks. Technically, I would have to recuse myself from council decisions, but I think most of the heavy lifting has been done, and I will still work as an individual.
Thank you. And Ms. Keith, you're next.
On the high-speed rail issue, this is a huge, complicated issue, and I have to say, in looking at it, what I would really like to see happen is that the high-speed rail ends in San Jose. I mean, I think that if we ended it in San Jose and then we're able to electrify the Caltrain tracks from San Jose to San Francisco, that makes the most sense to me when I look at this project, because it wouldn't cause great disruption to all these wonderful communities that we have from San Jose to San Francisco. So for me, I think that's what I would like to see. But I also believe that we need to work on contingency plans as a community to look at what the other aspects of this are. Grade separation, we need visuals. I know I think it was 2004, there was a grade separation study done, and I think we need to pull those out and start making those available to the public again, and really look at that. I am not in favor of any sort of aerial viaduct. So I can be brief on this. I saw my time come up, but I really think that it would be best to simply electrify Caltrain and terminate this in San Jose.
Thank you. Mr. Klein is next.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I opposed this before the 1A proposition came out, wrote a letter in the Almanac to prove my influence, and 57% of the residents voted for it. So that shows you the influence of my mighty position on council. I was before I think the community heard all the facts. At the point in time, we were arguing the business plan is not complete. It didn't have the proper economics to tie in statewide. It also didn't have the appropriate ridership projections that we thought were dictating the outcome on the size, the girth, and the path of the train itself. And we've been fighting it ever since. I called Yoriko Kishimoto Asked her if we could start a coalition of cities in a direct response to Quentin Kopp's attack, that we should be working together as a community. We formed the PCC. I chair it now. Eureka chaired it a year ago. We have taken on several issues at the highest level, the ridership projections being one, the economic plan being another, the authority's ability to lead as another. We have urged the High-Speed Rail Authority to slow this down and to do better proper studying and analysis. They, after 2 years, are still proposing on the table a freeway of trains 82 feet high, 82 feet wide, 45 feet high, through the spine of our community, without pause. And they'll say, well, throw in for good, good speaking, here we can put it underground too, but we don't like putting it underground because it's going to cost too much. So while we're concerned about all the big projects in town, and there's a lot of drama around the projects in town, I swear to you, there is nothing that's going to tear up this community more than a 45-foot high train freeway. That's where you should be spending your energy, because nobody in Sacramento is listening, even now, after 2 years of fighting.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
Seems to me there are two issues with high-speed rail. One is, does it make sense economically just as a tool for our state? And I don't think the numbers are there to support it. It's possible that the LA to San Diego portion might be economically viable. And it seems to me that if we were going to try this anywhere, we want to try that segment to see, one, if the riders materialize, and two, if we can build it for the kind of money that we're talking about. The second issue is, if it's going to come up here north, should we send it right through the center of some of the most expensive real estate in the entire country? And it seems to me that the answer is no, that it's just foolish. It's silly, it's arrogant, and so I oppose it on that. I was one of the 43% that voted against it. It didn't make sense then. But I'll tell you who it did make sense to. It made sense to the career politicians in San Jose and San Francisco who are building huge palaces to support it. It made sense to the unions and all the folks that are promoting jobs. And that rationale about promoting jobs, frankly, is the same rationale that's being used to support the Gateway project and give us our blessing on it, that somehow we're going to produce jobs. Now, in the case of the high-speed rail, that at least will produce jobs in the next 3, 4, 5 years if it were to occur. The Gateway project wouldn't produce anything for at least 8 years and perhaps longer. So very powerful interests support it. It's hard to know how much time I would spend on it. I would certainly do the financial analysis. I'd be able to analyze the documents that came through. But what I want to focus on is the finances of our city. So to me, it's not that I'm opposed to it, but I want to focus on our city and give a local focus to my efforts should I be fortunate enough to be elected to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson?
Thank you. So many of my thoughts on this have already been echoed by fellow candidates up here. Indeed, I've been to Sacramento with Russ, had a long time in the car up and back to really get to know one another and understand issues, and I really appreciate his leadership on this. Also, Rich has been phenomenal. The amount of time that he's putting in with the Peninsula Cities Coalition is just terrific. As Russ said, I would have probably voted for this before I came on council. I'm a huge mass transit advocate. I think we do need to find ways to get people out of their cars. It's essential to really meeting the challenges that we face with climate change. But high-speed rail isn't going to get our constituents here to or from work. We need a great mass transit network to do that, and this actually distracts from that, sucks money away from that. And it's important that we understand that. It's a trade-off. The other thing is that it's what I think will distinguish candidates up here is what people have actually done and the value of experience and incumbency. This is one area where having been on the council, having been to the meetings, having talked to fellow council members up and down the peninsula who have shared issues is really going to make a difference in whether we can stop this or not. it's very difficult for one little city to stop this by ourselves. But working together, we are stronger. We are making a difference. Our council has taken multiple paths to addressing this, including a legal path. We will continue to press High-Speed Rail Authority at every instance to prevent this from tearing our town apart.
Thank you. And Mr. Ohtaki.
Thank you. Certainly, I too am concerned about the economic viability of the high-speed rail project. The expense numbers, the ridership assumptions, the ticket prices, all of those, I'm very concerned about whether or not the project will actually be viable. I'm very concerned about the timing of building this now when the state already has a $20 billion budget deficit each year. And I recognize it's a separate entity, but you know, the state already has a very difficult and poor credit rating, and if this project, if the numbers don't work and the business model doesn't work for high-speed rail, it now becomes a collective debt burden on the state and on our taxpayers, meaning you and me. And that very much concerns me. I've yet to be convinced about the business model. Secondly, I used to live in Belmont where the Caltrain tracks are elevated, and it really does separate the town into two sides. So I'm opposed to any elevated route. I also know that our fire chief is opposed to an elevated track because when you have high density housing next to the track, you are creating a potential disaster. So I'm would only be favor of a below ground alternative. But again, so I'm keeping an open mind, but so far I'm not convinced by the numbers. Thanks.
Thank you.